Howdy, and welcome back. I'm Steven, and this is FWP Reviews. Coming off the back of one of the best movies of the year, May 2021, it is only my luck that the next month would coincidentally be a pretty bad month for movies. June 2021 was a massive letdown, but my hype continues to build as we start to roll out bigger and bigger movies into the coming months, including Black Widow and Green Knight just next month. I think that's cause to celebrate, don't you? So let's celebrate by looking at the good, the bad, and the mediocre of June 2021. I haven't got anything else clever to say, so let's start. Dream Horse starts out the month of June decent. It is an enthralling movie and it manages to get the viewer invested in it. It has some strong performances, mostly from the horse, that give it this certain charm. It focuses a lot on generic sports movie beats, but that doesn't mean it's a total lost cause. The effort and talent behind the camera make this decent story entertaining and pleasant for the viewer. Blue Miracle is about big fish and little orphans. Spoilers, in the end, they manage to catch the tuna they need to save their orphanage. I mean, it's in the title, Blue Miracle. It's a relatively lackluster and lifeless movie at times. At other times, it's decent and relatively engaging. There are some great chances towards the end to do something kind of cool with the cut to black moment, but alas, this movie doesn't roll like that. It's just decent. That's it. North Hollywood is an entertaining coming-of-age story centered in the titular North Hollywood. Last night, we may have been in Soho, but today, we're in NoHo, navigating the triumphs and woes of a teenager who wants to go pro in skating. He's good, but as any good coming-of-age story goes, his dad just isn't having it for whatever reason. When he begins to take off, he leaves his friends in the dust and tries to navigate his new romantic relationship. It's bogged down by worn down and well-used narrative points, but that doesn't hinder it from having a certain entertainment value. I felt entertained and content viewing and watching certain parts of this movie. It creates a solid atmosphere, and Ryder McLaughlin, Nico Harga, Miranda Cosgrove, and Aramis Hudson help enhance the movie even further. Of course, casting Vince Vaughn as the overbearing father figure was probably the best move this movie made. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Watch It, is the newest installment, and the only installment I've seen of the Conjuring series. After being told that this movie falls middle of the pack and not dead fucking last, does not give me any sort of rays of optimism I might watch any of these movies. This movie isn't scary in the slightest, and in some twisted sort of way, that kind of scares me. How can you be actively making and producing a horror movie that is so flat and lifeless that a child would think it's less scary than their morning cartoons? Then to top it all off, the narrative is just muddled and boring. It's just a horrible and boring time to be a viewer, and there's virtually no redeeming qualities. I watched New Gods, Nezha Reborn at a party, and virtually none of us had a clue what was going on in this movie. This movie is confusing, absurd, and a total mess. It hops around like a bunny on Easter morning, and the characters are so bizarre in such an unentertaining way. It feels like there's a shock factor death at the beginning and end of every time some sort of big action thing goes down to give it more weight. Nevertheless, the beautiful animation and Mad Max style action was pretty entertaining, but I still don't exactly know what was going on. Dance of the 41 aims to use its important and moving subject matter to make it worthwhile. Unfortunately, the movie's so bland, boring, and drawn out that none of it really resonated with me. It focuses on small interactions, which I admire, but it's trying to push this sweeping story, and it never focuses on the right small interactions for it to work. Ultimately, I get what they were going for, it just wasn't for me. 4 good days. More like 4 average days, because this movie was so average. Boom, roasted. It does have compelling themes about addiction and addiction recovery. Mila Kunis is great, and it's great to see Glenn Close doing something well again after seeing Hillbilly Elegy. However, many elements of this movie felt lazy. The camera work and narrative were both extremely lazy in this movie, and they stuck out like a sore thumb. It was entirely too predictable, and it never had the viewer or me on edge like they could have with this kind of story. Nevertheless, it's a somewhat worthwhile watch, albeit pretty average. In the Heights is probably the best movie I saw this month, and it didn't have much competition. I only saw 2 great movies probably. It has some great music and great performances. It captures this important neighborhood atmosphere that's necessary to make this kind of movie work. Somehow it is both way too long and feels like it's missing too many character interactions, and it just confuses me. There are gaps in character interactions where it feels like the tone is completely shifted between 2 characters, but it never gets explained and there's no nuance about it. It's not like a nuanced thing, it's just I think they left something out. It is flawed, but it's incredibly entertaining and is an incredibly important movie, and I really enjoyed watching it, so that's probably why it's the best of the month. I really enjoyed 15 Things You Didn't Know About Bigfoot in an unexpected way. This movie was the perfect combo of relevancy and absurdity. It never lets the viewer be confused about if this is like some sort of woke meta thing or if it's just a joke or what exactly intention is. It makes clear what it is to the viewer and never lets the viewer have those creeping thoughts like a lot of critiques of social media do, i.e. mainstream. It uses buzzwords from the clickbait industry that normally this type of movie, when they use buzzwords, just make me uncomfortable and make me harken back to the real life, but this one manages to use them in a funny way, and it's written well enough that the jokes land and line up with the narrative. The jokes are good and the ending was top tier, so it's a solid movie overall. I'm a sucker for decent, drug-based, mind-bending sci-fi. It's not an emerging subgenre, I would say, but it's one that I've been getting more into as of late, and I really enjoy all of the new movies coming out in this one. Not all of them, but most of them. Dylan O'Brien and Micah Monroe carry this movie. There are some slow moments in this movie that are hard to get through, but they're important for the themes and the narrative of the movie. However, there are some strong moments in this movie that are blood-pumping and experimental in their filmmaking style, and they're really enjoyable to watch and see this kind of creativity unfold on screen. It had me tense and very into the movie. In the end, it's one of the better movies I saw this month by a mile. My Salinger year can feel generic at times, but that doesn't stop it from having this sort of relentless and timeless charm. Margaret Qualley and Sigourney Weaver both help sell this movie. I'm always interested in the sort of movies that display and show a craft really well. And fortunately, that's exactly what this movie is for literary agents. It also has this really strong soundtrack that runs throughout, and it helps indicate certain tone shifts, and it does so really well in one of my favorite scenes of the movie. It uses predictable and subpar narrative elements to push through the movie, but I still enjoyed it and think it's solid nonetheless. New Order is the first of 2 bad neon-rated horror movies I saw this month. This movie has some distinctive visuals and a handful of solid moments, but that's really where the positives end. This movie is incredibly vague and in a completely ineffective way. It tries to make the viewer draw their own conclusions, which is admirable, but it doesn't give a tinge of what exactly the movie wants you to even start with. It also trades style for substance in this way, as they focus on trying to stylize the movie more than giving you at least a little bit to go on. Additionally, it's short, but it feels like ages when you're watching it. In the Earth is the second bad neon-rated horror movie I saw this month. After all the crappy movie content we've got relating to the pandemic and the inevitable bad stuff we'll get in the future, I thought In the Earth might be a decent take on pandemics and have a cool pandemic element to it. Without it being too buzzwordy, trying to be relevant, it would be something creative. And that it is, but it's also bad. The movie is muddled, confusing, and lacks any sort of substance. Like New Order, it trades a significant amount of style for substance, and in this movie's case, the style is not as good as New Order, so this movie is somehow even worse than New Order. It's a slow boil that doesn't engage with the viewer like it should or could with its timely narrative elements. Sony Animation is having a pretty good year with their straight-to-Netflix movies, and we see that again in Wish Dragon. It's a relative rehash of Aladdin, but it does enough to make it worth it. It's entertaining, and it's got a lot of good comedic moments. There is a compelling and absurd plot to help elevate the entertainment. It helps engage the viewer and have them invested in the strongly voice-acted characters. It has timely updates to the themes that it's rehashing from Aladdin, as well as introducing a few smaller new ones. And additionally, we get to see more beautiful animation. It's amazing how good animation is becoming, and being able to see great animation in basically any major animated movie you see now. In the end, it was good. Not great, but good. Oh wow, look, Hitman's Bodyguard looks stupid but cool because Ryan Reynolds, Samuel L. Jackson. I'll check it out so I can be ready for the new one. I am flabbergasted at how bad this movie was. And somehow the sequel's supposed to be worse? It was worse. Can we go back to the other one now? This has been a strong year for animation so far, and I expected usual heavy hitter Pixar to knock it out of the park with Luca, being as it's their only release this year. However, I failed to account for Pixar pulling their weight. It isn't awful, but it's terribly mediocre for what Pixar usually puts out. It is so generic and lacking in life in the first half, and it's lacking innovation throughout. And it's predictable from start to end, basically. It lacks that experimental element that makes Pixar movies, and other animated movies. It has beautiful animation, strong themes, excellent voice acting, but that's not enough to make it good in today's age. Every animated movie's got that. Not every animated movie, but I digress. Tony Hale is loser Sid Straw and eat Wheaties. Sid Straw knew Elizabeth Banks in college, but nobody around him seems to believe him, and for good reason. However, he manages to fall all the way down the corporate and social ladder as he tries to prove that he knew Elizabeth Banks in college. In the end, this movie was solid, more so than I was expecting. There were definitely moments that were long-winded or relied a lot on secondhand embarrassment for the humor. However, I enjoyed a lot of it, and it really had me laughing at a few points. It has strong themes, and a lot of the jokes did land. It's a fun concept, and the movie plays into it well enough that it makes for a relatively entertaining viewing experience. The Perfect Enemy had me interested. I was intrigued. Wait, now I'm disgusted. Now I'm just confused. This has been the 3 stages of a Perfect Enemy viewing. F9, the ridiculous name saga continues. It's absurd, nonsensical, and stupid. And I loved it. I'm a longtime fan of the franchise, and I don't think that the street racing heavy style of the first and third movies will ever be topped, but I've enjoyed these latter movies, Fast 5, Fast and Furious 6, as they get crazier and crazier, but still kind of keep these central themes at play. Fast 9 is the most absurd of the bunch by far. There is a clear escalation problem in the franchise. Nobody will deny it, fans or people that hate this movie alike. But I thought that all of my hope for the franchise was lost after the Fate of the Furious. It seems my worries were overstated. I understand the flaws and absurdities this can put on the viewer, but all I ask for is some solid racing, exciting moments, and for it to be full of life that we know and love. That's what this movie gave, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. I'm hoping they will wrap it up in the next couple of movies because I think that it has run its course. I don't think we're ever going to reach peak Fast and Furious ever again. And I don't want it to end here because I don't feel like this is an ending type movie, but I think they're working towards an ending, and I think that's the right thing to do because I'm still enjoying them, but eventually it'll get old even for me. Alright, I thought this was a joke, but Neon Rated distributed 2 bad horror movies this month, and now A24 has hopped in on the action and distributed False Positive. Also bad. Is this some sort of sick joke? Are you guys playing a prank on me? This movie was weird, intentional or not, and I was less intrigued and more just wanting to turn the TV off as soon as possible. It was so slow and boring at most points that even the twist didn't make me any more interested in it. Ultimately, this movie rounds off a very flat, probably just a bad month in general for horror movies. Alright, that's it. Horror genre on hold till further notice. You've heard it here first. Wow, The Ice Road, a new Liam Neeson movie. I bet it's bad. The Ice Road is bad. Who would have thought? The generic action aside, the visuals and CGI in this movie were so bad I wanted to projectile vomit. How can you put a movie out in good conscience knowing it looks worse than any video game ever made in all of the bad graphical games of all time? The first half hour was cool though. I enjoyed the trucker and logistical element until it just became obscene and jokey stuff. It was a hokey movie and I hope I never hear of it again. With that, we'll wrap up the good, the bad, and the mediocre of June 2021. We're at the halfway point of the year, and that means we're at the halfway point for movies I've watched. If you want to see the full ranking for the 125 2021 movies I've seen so far, check out my Instagram at FWP Reviews 100. The same day this is uploaded, this evening, I'll upload my ranking. With all that, this is FWP Reviews signing off. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.